As I have said for the last few days, the response from the West must be swift. This is because evil could not be negotiated with, and the West this week saw the evil that people can do that do not have any remorse for others and are centered on pure hatred. We saw firsthand that they are not fooling around when it comes to the people that they captured. They captured Americans, Turkish, and Jewish. They don't care who, they just wanted to capture people. What is the West's response to all of this? Let's find out.
Facts over tracks, isn't that spitting slow, spitting fast, I could roast, I could gas, think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past.
According to Reuters, Joe Biden called the Hamas attack an act of sheer evil, which it is, and said that Washington was rushing additional military assistance to Israel, including ammunition and interceptors, to replenish the Iron Dome Israeli defense system. He urged Israel to follow the, quote, law of war, and said that the United States has strengthened its presence in the region by moving an aircraft carrier strike group of fighter aircraft, which would just be peace through strength. He also said, quote, let me say this again, to any country, any organization, anyone trying to take advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. And in assumed reference to Iran and its proxies, the United States officials said that they do not have any evidence that Iran orchestrated the attacks, but point to its long-term support for Hamas. What makes the United States move even quicker is the fact that there was at least 11 Americans killed in Israel in the Hamas attacks, and several Americans are believed to be among the 100 plus hostages taken into Gaza by the militant group. Biden confirmed Monday, but the worst thing is that without a House Speaker, the United States cannot do anything. The military is just up in a standstill. This message is for you, GOP representatives. You must come to an agreement right now. This is not time for your little games. Matt Gaetz, you need to get your big boy pants on and you need to get things done. Act like a man. This is wartime. You must act like a grown adult. The grown adult that you are, and come together with the rest of the GOP and the rest of the sane people in Congress to actually save our fellow Americans from this militant regime. Now, getting back to the phone call with Netanyahu and Biden, Netanyahu told Biden that Israel has no choice but to unleash a ground operation in Gaza. Biden did not try to press Netanyahu or convince him not to go through with the ground invasion. Axios' Brock Revade reports Biden pledged to work with Israel on every aspect of the hostage crisis, including sharing of intelligence and United States expertise. In the afternoon, Biden conveyed a call with the leaders of the United Kingdom, France, Italy, and Germany, who together issued a joint statement unequivocally condemning Hamas. The White House was illuminated in blue and white in solidarity with Israel on Monday night, joining the United Kingdom's 10 Downing Street, Berlin's Brandenburg Gate, and Sydney's Opera House, and other global landmarks. In this moment of heartbreak, the American people stand shoulder to shoulder with Israelis. We remember the pain of being attacked by terrorists at home, and Americans across the country stand united against the evil acts that have once more claimed innocent American lives. Biden said in his own statement on Monday, "It is an outrage, and we will continue to show the world that the American people are unwavering in our resolve to oppose terrorism in all forms." And I completely agree with this response. It is exactly the response that we needed, and hopefully he continues this along these lines. The beginning of his response was abysmal, but we can just forgive and forget that beginning part, but we are still going to be reporting on it. As soon as Israel was attacked by Hamas, he had a barbecue at the White House. So I just don't understand why he chose that very day to have a barbecue at the White House. He could have had a barbecue at the White House any other day, but this response is the exact response that we're looking for. So it's like you give some and you get some, okay? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just gonna have that barbecue anyway, and it was just a strange coincidence. But, you know, this is the exact response that I wanted, like I said, so I will forgive and forget, okay? But I will not forgive and forget the first 3 years of his office, but, you know, I'll forget this 1 week, okay? That's what I'll do for Joe Biden right now. With that being said, we're going to be digging into the media's takes.
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
Okay, so starting off, we actually have a Federalist article. We have the specter of Barack Obama's deeply held anti-Israel ideology hovers over Israeli attacks. So Obama embraced anti-Semites, stepped himself into anti-American ideas, and cuzzled up to Iran, and now he leaves a violent legacy. As of Monday morning, 2 days after the Hamas committed horrible atrocities across Israel, the worst single attack in the country's history, former President Barack Obama has yet to issue a statement about any of the attacks. There could be any number of ambiguous reasons for that, but it's also true that Obama's relationship with Israel would lead one to speculate about some not so just motivations. Certainly, there are many legitimate questions to ask about the government of Israel's behavior, the limits of Americans' national interest is in the region, and whether Protestant America's fetishing of the Holy Land keeps us from seeing issues in the region with moral clarity. However, any fair-minded critique of Israel is far cry from Obama's well-established and radical views on the Middle East that stem, by his own admission, from his efficiency for radicals such as Franz Fanon, whose brain-dead swagger produced such sentiments as decolonization reeks of red-hot cannonballs and bloody knives. And it's probably time to admit that, while attempting to bury their arms under layers of academic sophistication, Obama and his acolytes used his presidency to destabilize the Middle East in the service of the left-wing ideology that accuses anti-Semitism and leftist terrorist violence. Now, this is the Federalist Views. I'm just reading the article here. In August, Tablet magazine published a much-discussed comprehensive interview between David Smalls and Obama biographer David Garrow. The biggest headlines that emerged from the interview had to do with Garrow uncovering... Hey, Lily, come here. Hey, Lily. In August, Tablet magazine published a much-discussed comprehensive interview between David Smalls and Obama biographer David Garrow. The biggest headlines that emerged from the interview had to do with Garrow uncovering letters where Obama wrote in detail about his gay sex fantasies, but buried beneath that revelation was a substantial discussion of Obama's anti-Israel politics, or as the Tablet's David Smalls put it, Obama's hospitality to American expectationalism also seemed likely to his hostility to Israel, or more specifically, to America's identification with Israel. As Smalls went on to note, the impeccable fixation Obama had with making Iran the world's leading state sponsor of terror attacks, the same country behind Hamas atrocities in Israel over the weekend, a regional hegemon in spite of Israel and Saudi objections, and ample proof of that. But historically, it's worth noting that animus is deeply personal and not some misguided policy objective. In his biography, Dreams of My Father, he told a very self-serving vision of how he came to break up with an early girlfriend, Shalila Mayoshi Jagger. Essentially, she rejected Obama's incipient embrace of black racial consciousness in favor of her own white-identified liberal universalism. However, Garrow tracked down Jagger, who's now a respected professor at Oberlin, and she told a very different vision of events. At the time they were dating, a Chicago mayoral aide named Steve Coley, in conjunction with notorious Nation of Islam founder Louis Farrakhan, had accused Jewish doctors in Chicago of infecting black babies with AIDS as part of a genocidal plot against African Americans, and she broke up with Obama after he pointedly refused to condemn Coley's obvious anti-Semitism. Obama would later make up with the inescapable Farrakhan when he was a senator and taking a smile photo with him. The photo was taken in 2005 and mysteriously was never released until 2018. There were more controversies that stem from his 2008 presidential run that stand out here. First was the Jeremiah Waite controversy. Obama had long attended a church in Chicago where the pastor, the aforementioned White, had said a lot of controversial left-wing things from the pulpit, including that America invited the attacks of 9/11 on itself and dabbed in anti-Semitism. The controversy forced Obama to distance himself from Wright, and a few months after Obama was elected, White blamed them Jews for keeping him from Obama. After years of experience to White's incendiary rhetoric, the idea Obama didn't realize he was anti-Semitic until he ran for president is preposterous. Then there was an issue of Obama's friendship with Rashid Khalid, who is now a professor at Columbia University he formerly worked at University of Chicago with the future president. Khalid is cited in press reports as a spokesperson for the Palestinian Liberation Organization PLO terror group. In the early 80s, though, Khalid claims the categorization is inaccurate. It's undeniable, however, Khalid made numerous controversial remarks over the years justifying Palestinian violence. Eventually, as Obama's 2008 campaign was heating up, the Los Angeles Times wrote a story headlined, "Allies of Palestine See a Friend in Obama," noting Obama's especially close and warm relationship with Khalid. The Los Angeles Times had a videotape of Obama speaking at an event honoring Khalid, where many of the speakers attacked Israel. However, despite calls to release that video of the event with Khalid, the Times never released a video publicly, noting that, quote, Obama publicly expresses a pro-Israel viewpoint that pleases many Jewish leaders. Obama's track record would certainly point that disingenuous opposition to the test. Finally, there was Obama's embrace of Robert Malley in December of 2007, that the Obama campaign put out a press release listing Malley as a campaign advisor. Malley had previously worked in the Middle East issues for the Clinton administration, though he was not well liked by the Jewish community because his father, journalist Simon Malley, was a friend of the sympathizer of Yasser Arafat, the head of the PLO terror group. Robert Malley himself had also written a series of essays for the New York Review of Books on the Middle East issues that led prominent Jewish commentator and former owner of the New Republic, Marty Perez, to call him a rabid hater of Israel. No question about it. After the backlash to Malley, the Obama campaign issued a statement saying Malley was not officially on the campaign and was only providing informal advice. Despite supposedly not working on the Obama campaign, in May, the Times of London reported that Malley had been ejected from the campaign's Middle East advisory group after they learned he had meetings with Hamas. After supposedly being sacked from the campaign twice, shortly after Obama was elected, and it was revealed Malley had been dispatched to Egypt and Syria over the last few weeks to outline the Democratic candidate's policy on the Middle East. So that's stupid. You're going to say one thing and then you're just going to do the other thing. You're going to say it again and then do the other thing. This is now your third warning. You're just lying to the public at this point. Continuing with the article, I confess I hadn't thought much about Malley in the last 15 years, other than to assume he was up to no good. This summer, I learned he was the Biden administration's special envoy to Iran, in that he had been fired once again. And this time, it was serious enough that he lost his security clearance and was being accused of mishandling classified info, just like everyone else. Only in the past weeks have the real facts come into sharper relief. Robert Malley helped to fund, support, and direct an Iranian intelligence operation designed to influence the United States and allied governments according to a trove purloined Iranian government emails. Iran, of course, was actively involving in funding and coordinating Hamas atrocities in this past weekend. At the same time this was all being planned, the apparently traitorous Malley was working on Iran issues in the administration that made the questionable decision to give Iran billions of dollars in a desperate attempt to jumpstart Obama's Iran nuclear deal. Indeed, many have observed that Iran's role in the attack seems motivated by the desire to force Israel to aggressively defend itself. A violent response from Israel would then be exploited to drive a wedge between Israel and Sunni Gulf states that had emerged in the rapprochement under the successful Abraham Accords of the Trump administration. That the Biden administration, which is essentially functioning as Obama's third term, involves many of the same personnel, also had the same goal of blowing up the Abraham Accords to focus on empowering Iran as a regional hegemon. Threatening Israel is not a coincidence. Speaking of coincidences, did I mention that America's freckless Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is an old high school pal of Robert Malley? On Sunday, Blinken tweeted that he was pushing a quote ceasefire between Israel and Hamas before deleting it. The idea that Iran would be behind the most successful attack on Israel in the history of the United States would be against Israel fighting back? Weird. How everything keeps breaking up Tehran's way, huh? Indeed, Obama is hardly the one tenured radical in our political establishment that shares these radical left-wing foreign political views. A toxic combination of self-righteousness and self-loathing that views our national interest in America's relationship with Israel as inherently suspicious. The sheer amount of political capital and focus Obama put into achieving the Iran nuclear deal during the second term, to the near exclusion of other goals, suggests that the deal was central to his politics. It also carries more than a whiff of the kind of politics in which the American empire is seen not just as unacceptable, but also in some ways as actively evil, observed Smalls. It was a politics born out of a confluence of the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement, which saw a racist war abroad being used to protect a racist power structure at home. That old alliance of civil rights, anti-imperialism, and identity politics made the Democratic Party and Obama positioned himself to lead college-educated, corporate-controlled, seemed cool, allowing it to use post-1960s radical ideology as a language to sell stuff. I hardly believe that Obama is such a monster he secretly roots for atrocities in Israel. Even if it does seem like he's never met an anti-Semite he would willingly disown. Regardless, there's no doubt that these horrifying nationwide terror attacks in Israel are Obama's legacy, a result of his arrogant anti-American ideology put into practice. But after the weekend, even Democratic partisans are scrambling to distance themselves from Biden and Obama's administration's ill-advised cozying up to Iran. Now, we need to follow through and make sure Obama's Biden foreign policy legacy in the dangerous ideology that motivated it is rejected and held up in the future that it is. And I completely agree with this article. I mean, it's true. All of the things that it said is true. Obama wanted the Iran nuclear deal for a reason. The Iran nuclear deal is actually, anti-Semitic because it's anti-Israel. So, I mean, it's just right there. It's just in plain day. But a lot of people just don't realize this because they're just too focused on the fact that Obama just changes the way that he talks depending on who he's talking to. He's just a political guy. He's a politician. That's what politicians do. They just change the way that they talk depending on who they're talking to. So moving on to the next article, we actually have another Federalist article. We have the United States money trail with Iran is worse than you think. So it all becomes even more ingenuous when inspected within the context of the Biden administration's foreign and domestic policies. Many of the articles surrounding the atrocity of the Hamas attacks this past weekend have referenced the recent $6 billion deal in which the United States gave this money to Iran in exchange for 5 Americans. It already seemed like the worst trade in history, but it's more nefarious than simply unleashing $6 billion to Iran, a known terrorist state, and the most existential threat to the free world. In reality, this one detail hyperlinked quickly in the most articles in part of a larger spider web of hidden details. In a recent article, senior advisor at the Foundation of Defense and Democracies and former National Security Council official Richard Goldberg traces the money trail. He confirms it is much worse than we think. Goldberg lays out the numbers. The $6 billion you've seen in every other headline is only the money being transferred from our friends in Qatar. But this is separate from the $10 billion in assets being transferred from Iraq, which Goldberg says will continue on a rolling basis. Then there are the reports that Iran will be allowed to access $7 billion in fiat currency by trading drawing rights with the International Monetary Fund. He also says Japan is scheduled to transfer $3 billion to Iran. Money is fungible, and even if funds have not yet been unfrozen, are likely being treated as good credit in Iran's ledger. The revelations do not end there. The United States officials have quietly acknowledged that they have uncapped Iranian oil exports to China. These export levels previously held around 775,000 barrels per day under Trump sanctions are now estimated between 1.4 and 2.2 million barrels a day. Modest estimations value this relief at $25 billion annually. The total, $50 billion. It's giving a thug a loaded machine gun and expecting him not to shoot the bullets. It's completely true. This is completely true right there. Less than a decade ago, the spokesman for Azadin al-Qassam brigades publicly thanked Iran for providing the, quote, weapons, money, and other equipment used in the attacks. Although there has been no public thank you to Iran from Hamas in retaliation to the surprise attack in Israel this past weekend, it is clear that Iran did not help plan the attack. It is unlikely they stopped there, but of course, the Biden administration is hesitant to confirm this, with Republicans already alleging the White House ties to the attacks. They would like to avoid any evidence that confirms what most of the world suspects. This is peeling back what is only the first layer of deception in the Biden administration's policies. Top United States officials directly supporting Iran's interests. We know that Iran has already ejected international nuclear inspectors and are now on their way to building a facility that is believed to be so deep underground that it would be impenetrable to any airstrikes. Iran did not have to stop their own production of high enriched uranium. They're merely producing it at a slower rate. But Biden administration chose to pick up Obama's era discussion to our unrestrained Iran based on a pinky promise. Most recently, we learned that top officials were influencing the United States government in favor of the Iranian nuclear power. A series of recently leaked emails have focused on Erling Tabaka, the chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense for Special Operations. Messages show her involvement with the Iran Experts Initiative, IEI, a direct Iranian government initiative to allegedly improve the country's image abroad. It would seem like the mandate of improving the country's image, including influencing the United States government to Tehran, more flexibility in expanding uranium enrichment. That's very different from the fruit and art exchanges you might have expected, but it does clarify the quiet suspension of the Biden administration's lead Iran negotiator, Robert Malley, which was previously unexplained. We've come to learn of other aides who are directly corresponding with the Iranian government for their United States government posts, such as Al Verz and Diana Efendirisuri. I'm butchering that name. Iran has never hidden its motivations, even in the past. Iranian lawmakers proudly chanted death to America and posted it on the news. We talked about it. They have always told us exactly who they were, and we still made a deal with the devil. Meanwhile, Iran recently launched yet another imaging satellite, which is assumed to be part of their ballistic missile program. Nuclear warheads don't fly themselves. They are placed on ballistic missiles that carry them to their targets. This goes against the United Nations Security Council resolutions that are set to expire on October 18. Biden administration's trade and energy independence for unstable Middle East. It also becomes even more horrendous when inspected within the context of the Biden administration's foreign and domestic policies. We're stopping oil production in America while allowing Iran to export more, all under the facade of green energy, which is stupid, by the way. The administration has given the green light to increase oil production in the country, that its greatest existential threat to the free world. Meanwhile, Biden has choked American oil production with the fewest number of offshore oil and gas leases in history. This is after Biden canceled all remaining leases in Alaska, but since these leases are for 2024 to 2029, he pushed off Americans truly feeling this at the pump until quite conveniently after the election. Squeezing the American wallet is far from the most dire consequences of the policy. Biden has drained the Strategic Petroleum Reserves, SPR, to multi-decade lows. Despite claims that they would be replenishing the reserves, the administration has not yet to refill the reserves. They have pulled an offer at the end of the summer because the market conditions, namely oil, is already too expensive, and we are drained of our most important backup resource. In parallel, the Biden administration has been actively working to cut legs off of Saudi Arabia-Israel deal. After all, why would we want to encourage stability in the Middle East? Israel and Saudi Arabia have quietly been building diplomatic relations since the Arab Accords, exchanging leaders and experts on various issues, and all without touching the Palestinian topic. In fact, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, in an interview with Fox News several weeks ago, refused to make demands from Israel on the Palestinian issues and simply stated that his expectation was merely that Israel improves the lives of Palestinians. But now the Biden administration has thrown a wet blanket on the entire deal, insisting on numerous concessions to the Palestinians. Okay, so I kind of disagree because of the fact that concessions with the Palestinians are the ones that caused this war in Israel. So the United States, yes, should stay out of that, but also at the same exact time, why are we making concessions with Palestine? We should be focusing on Saudi Arabia. So these are two different things right here. So Palestinians are the ones responsible for the Israel attacks because of the fact that Palestine actually controls Gaza Strip. So it's Gaza controlled. The Gaza Strip is controlled by Palestine. Palestine is the evil regime that is responsible for the world's horror that happened over the weekend. So why would they even want to work with somebody that has been killing them? No, Saudi Arabia they should be working with. Palestine, no. Israel is likely to carry out the dirty work of an actual operation to stop Iranian nuclear operations. Saudi Arabia was there to get Arab world in line for what they do. We can presume the reason that the United States was brought to the table was to serve as a brass backup. The talks well underway came to an impasse as close sources began leaking frustrations for both the Saudi and Israeli sides. While these countries were working on a historic deal to prevent a nuclear Iran, Biden was playing hardball. This severity of unnecessarily of a large military response from Israel in Gaza has eliminated the chances of Saudis being able to shake hands with Israel for a while. Iran will continue enriching uranium. Again, this one specific money trail doesn't even begin to cover the extent of the insanity. It is only a small detail within the wider web of the Biden administration's policies. To add an even more baffling layer to the mix, Iran is a country that beats and jails women if their hair shows too much from under their hijab. And in the homosexuality activity that can lead to death penalty, Biden's submission to Iran is directly at odds to the values that the political left claims to champion. I completely agree. At this point, America has simply left the world stage and it is funding terror. The extent of this hidden money trail has not yet been fully realized, and it isn't only Gaza. It's Lebanon, it's Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and it will be Paris and London, and it is likely purring over the United States southern border, and it is coming to a neighborhood near you. And I completely agree. If we're having all of these people, if we're sitting here, okay, having all these people going to Israel through their border, just imagine what's going through our border on an everyday basis. Now, to put this into a perspective, for how many people actually invaded Israel. Okay, so if we were to put this in perspective, Israel has about 8 million Jewish people. 1,000 Jewish people were murdered over the weekend. To put that in perspective, the United States has 350 million people. Now, to put that in perspective in the aspect of how many people are actually in the population, that would mean the equivalent of 30,000 people dead across the country of the United States. But imagine if somebody from our southern border came through and started going to villages and attacking them and raping them. Just imagine the response that the United States would have against those people, because they know that those people are evil. They came through our border illegally, first of all. Second of all, they're killing and raping our own people. Just imagine the response that the United States will have against that one country that's doing that and that's responsible for the people coming in here. That is going to be the same exact response that Israel will be giving Palestine and Iran and Gaza. The Gaza Strip will be no more and it will be rubble. They will take control of the Gaza Strip because they gave the Gaza Strip in 2008. And this is what happened. So giving your enemy what they want is not the answer here. Giving your enemy a bullet in the head and saying, no, you're not going to have the chance to do this in the future because we're going to obliviate you. That's what is needed in this war, because we tried being the nice guy. Iran is not the nice guy. Israel tried being the nice guy by giving them the land that they had in the Gaza Strip, but they took advantage of that. Now it's time to act accordingly. You killed thousands of citizens in Israel, Israel will fight back. And yes, they're saying to all of the people in the buildings, escape with your lives. Escape before the bullets and the missiles come. But the Gaza Strip and Hamas is telling its citizens to stay in those very buildings. And that's exactly why they put the military centers underneath hospitals and schools, because they want to stand behind their citizens. They want their military citizens or military officials to have a baby in their hand and say, if you shoot me, I'm going to kill this baby. That's disgusting. That's the kind of people Hamas is. That's the kind of people that the Gaza Strip consists of. It's disgusting and it's a disgrace. That's exactly why Israel cut off its power to the Gaza Strip and cut off its water supply so all the people can evacuate to Turkey and all the other nearby countries. So then when the people go and get away from the country, then they can go and bomb and missile the country. Throughout the years, they have stopped missile attacks that they had planned because of the fact that there will be too many civilian attacks and civilian deaths. So Israel is the one that is protecting life and in the integrity of the human race by not killing civilians for no reason. But Hamas is the one that's coming in and killing and raping families for no reason at all other than just being celebrating their holiday, being Jewish people. That's not a reason to be killed. And it's a disgrace that people are standing up for them and saying that this was a good thing that they did. It's a disgusting disgrace that they did. And everybody that is responsible for it should be ashamed.